Your presence on the Golden Sequence channel makes us happy. Please like and subscribe to the video if you want to watch the remainder of it. Today, however, we are at your disposal by introducing the contentious film Tetris. I kindly urge you to stick with me through this entire video since we will learn useful details about this exceptional piece of art. Hank Rogers from Bulletproof Software presents his most current video game, which came out in 1988, at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Instead, while there, he develops a liking for the video game Tetris, which was created by a Russian programmer named Alexei Pajitnov who works for the Soviet company ELORG. Rogers tells a bank manager that Robert Stein of Andromeda Software had a contract with media mogul Robert Maxwell and his son, CEO of Mirrorsoft, Kevin Maxwell, allowing them to distribute Tetris in exchange for game royalties after acquiring the global licensing rights to the game from ELORG. In the meanwhile, Rogers had purchased from the Mirrorsoft representative at CES the Tetris rights for PC, console, and arcade in Japan. When Rogers visits Nintendo's headquarters in Japan, he meets with CEO Hiroshi Yamauchi and persuades him of Tetris' value. He proposes a partnership over a buyout offer for the Tetris rights, which Yamauchi accepts. Then Rogers applies for a loan, agreeing to higher interest rates, and pledges his home as collateral in order to fund the construction of arcade hardware and Nintendo cartridges. His wife and business partner ache me concerns, but Rogers cites his children's obsession with the game as proof that his bet will pay off. In a call Rogers receives shortly after the start of production, Kevin informs him that Sega has already been promised the arcade rights. Rogers goes back to Yamauchi and asks for the advance residuals. He is instead brought to the Nintendo of America office in Seattle, where he is given a tour of the organization's upcoming Game Boy portable gaming device, which will be sold alongside Super Mario Land. Rogers convinces President Minoru Arakawa and Senior VP Howard Lincoln to package Tetris instead, and Rogers promises to obtain the handheld licensing rights. When he visits the Maxwells in London, they let him know that Stein still has the exclusive right to all global licensing. Rogers' offer for the portable rights was turned down. The Maxwells offer Stein their consent to purchase the handheld rights. Kevin questions his father about the millions of pounds that are missing from the employee pension fund, but his questions are dismissed. Outside, Rogers approaches Stein and offers a $25,000 price for the worldwide handheld rights. Stein appears to accept the offer. Arakawa and Lincoln call Rogers later to let him know that Stein has changed his mind and will now sell Atari the handheld rights for $100,000. Despite Stein's promises that she will, when Kevin learns of this, he and Rogers decide to travel to Moscow to personally purchase the rights. Sasha offers to interpret for Rogers when they first meet as he tries to locate the ELORG headquarters. Rogers converses with ELORG President Nikolai Belikov despite her exhortation that he must have an official invitation in order to attend. He is led by her to ELORG. While Sasha interprets, Rogers claims that he licenses Tetris to Nintendo. Rogers is accused of stealing by Belikov while saying that ELORG only licensed Tetris for the PC and that Belikov had never heard of Nintendo. Belikov gives Rogers the go-ahead to return the next morning after promising to take care of the situation. Outside, Rogers is confronted by a KGB agent who orders him to return inside. Kevin is greeted upon his arrival in Moscow by Valentin Trifonov, the head of the Soviet Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a member of the Communist Party Central Committee. In the morning, Rogers meets with Alexei and Belikov. Trifonov briefly stops Rogers to warn him that he must leave or face the consequences of his crimes, including using a tourist's visa for unauthorized commercial reasons and possessing a fake license, but Rogers won't budge. Alexei alleges that despite creating Tetris, he does not get any royalties from the game that he believes would make him very wealthy. Rogers discovers that ELORG did not additionally license the rights to the arcade, furthering his justification to Belikov. Stein and Kevin are also at ELORG to discuss handheld rights, but neither of them is aware of Rogers' presence. According to Rogers' study of the original contract Stein signed, even though he had really stolen the arcade rights, Stein had actually obtained the video game rights due to the vague definition of the phrase computer. Stein is handed a new contract for arcade and PC rights by Belikov. Rogers asks Alexei to take him to his hotel in an attempt to start up a discussion. Alexei responds coolly and gives Rogers his address, despite the fact that it is against the law for anyone to welcome guests into their homes in the USSR. In the meanwhile, Trifonov meets with Kevin and discusses his lowly beginnings and his conviction that the Soviet Union is crumbling. Additionally, he suggests Kevin pay him off in exchange for his cooperation in securing the rights. Robert offers Trifonov a significant sum of money to help Kevin obtain them, but Trifonov rejects. Rogers visits Alexei's apartment for supper, where they make friends over their similar interest in game development. Rogers makes ideas for the game's rules while playing the original Tetris on Alexei's computer. Alexei and his wife hide Roger when a neighbor comes on their door out of fear. Rogers refuses to let Alexei follow him to a legitimate Russian club despite Alexei's pleadings for him to go. There, Alexei remarks that he and Rogers are not all that dissimilar from one another, and Rogers is surprised by the Russians' adoration of the final countdown and their desire for independence. The Russian embassy in Tokyo's personnel threatened Rogers' family while the KGB officials thrashed Rogers in an alley. His hotel room has been ransacked when he returns. Sasha tells Rogers that her room was also searched when she arrived and explains why the government considers Rogers to be such a threat. She gives him an impetuous kiss, but Rogers tells her he is already married. Trifonov instructs Alexei and his sons to find out their father's location the next morning. The following morning, Rogers and Stein cross paths when hailing taxis. In order to make up for the restricted amount he can pay upfront, Rogers provides royalties per unit sold and expects millions of copies to be sold as Stein signs the new contract. Following that, Rogers makes a bid for the handheld rights. Trifonov gives Belikov the order to sell to Microsoft, notwithstanding Kevin's failure to make a royalty offer. The rights to the video game are also offered to Rogers, and he surreptitiously obtains Rogers' signature on a letter to give him time to make a better counteroffer. By redefining the term computer in Stein's new contract, he closed the gap that Stein had used to his advantage. Kevin is required to sign a letter of intent from Belikov that grants Microsoft the rights to the portable device in exchange for $1 million within a week. Alexei brings Rogers to Dzerzhinsky Square. He informs Rogers about his father's university teaching career and how the Soviet government ruined his family as a result of his opposition to a colleague's incarceration for exporting a book while they travel. Before accompanying Rogers to the airport, he recognizes Trifonov and reveals that Sasha is actually a KGB agent working for Trifonov. When Rogers comes home, he learns that ELORG has broken the deal and has used photos of him kissing Sasha to blackmail him into quiet. As soon as Nintendo buys the license from Microsoft, Lincoln calls to inform him of the development. When Rogers, who is sad, rejects his daughter's concert as unimportant, she and Acme are incensed. The letter of intent from Microsoft is faxed to Rogers by Alexei at Belikov's request. While this is going on, Kevin finds his father shredding a number of papers. Robert again brushes off his question on the reason why the company was unable to pay the $1 million. Rogers hands them the letter as Lincoln and Arakawa fiercely debate over losing Tetris and their cartridge patent to Atari. However, Microsoft had not yet fulfilled its $1 million offer, so the rights to the worldwide video game and portable markets were still up for grabs. Prior to the three traveling back to Moscow to make another offer, Trifonov dismisses Alexei from his job and has him evicted from his apartment once Rogers returns. They made an offer for the worldwide rights to mobile devices and video games at their meeting with Belikov, Rogers, Lincoln, and Arakawa. Robert has only 24 hours to get the $1 million that was previously promised, so Sasha, who is also present, pressures Belikov to evaluate the proposition all night. She next gets in touch with Trifonov, who subsequently tells Robert. Stein vehemently accuses Kevin of doing something behind his back that caused him to lose the video game rights, even though Kevin rejects this. The three are conscious of the fact that they lack any rights for portable or video gaming devices, so Robert and Kevin travel to Moscow to meet with Mikhail Gorbachev and make a request. Gorbachev says no. Alexei meets with Rogers, telling him angrily that they are not friends and that they should return to their own worlds. As he makes his way home, he overhears the spies keeping an eye on him, ordering Trifonov to stop Rogers' unit. The Maxwells ask Belikov for the licensing rights, but Rogers' team interrupts and offers a counter-proposal. Belikov declines. By accident, Robert is forced to tell Kevin that Microsoft is bankrupt and was unable to fulfill their $1 million obligation. Belikov tells the group that they won't be secure until they leave Moscow and rejects the Maxwells in favor of Rogers' offer. In his confrontation with the Maxwells, Trifonov unintentionally informs Sasha and Kevin about the bribe. Trifonov's men try to halt Rogers outside, but Alexei arrives in his car and helps Rogers escape. Alexei beats Trifonov to the airport after a car chase. When they hear police sirens, Rogers tells Alexei to go home while reassuring him that they are not saying goodbye. Trifonov is detained for corruption by Sasha before he can board the aircraft. Rogers succeeds to trick Trifonov despite his best efforts to stop him. Rogers asks his daughter to do the concert he missed after apologizing to both of them and presenting Acme with a check from Nintendo for $5 million. Later, the Game Boy became incredibly well-liked all across the world. As the Soviet Union disintegrates, Rogers sends Alexei a Game Boy and plane tickets to the United States, and they meet in San Francisco. The reputation and legacy of Tetris are discussed in the next portion of the text, which is followed by information about how Stein continued to license video games and how Kevin had faced trial for Robert's theft of millions of pounds from employee funds. Thank you for following along with my video thus far. Please show your support for me by liking my page. You may also tell me in the comments what your next movie will be. I hope to see you on the Golden Sequence channel again soon. Goodbye.